A growing divide in the global climate change movement. During a recent rally in Amsterdam, climate activist Greta Thunberg got into a tussle with another activist who was upset she included anti-Israel rhetoric in her speech.
The people in power have not been listening.
I come here for a climate demonstration, not a political view.
Calm down. No climate justice on occupied land. No climate justice on occupied land.
Joining us with more is Jewish climate journalist, Young Voices commentator Ethan Brown. Ethan hosts the Sweaty Penguin podcast. Ethan, good to talk with you again. So tell us more about this Greta Thunberg moment. Was this just one guy who was upset, or were others at the rally also expressing disgust over her political stance?
I think this is representative of a larger trend in the climate movement, where we're seeing lots of activists and prominent figures, even some world leaders, using climate rallies, climate conferences as a platform to bash Israel. Now, I'm a Jewish climate commentator. My heart's broken for both Gazans and Israelis who are innocent, who have died in this war. It's been a very difficult and emotional time, not to mention Israeli hostages. But I felt that to bring climate into it and link the two, you need to do so very deliberately and accurately and constructively, and that's not what's happening right now.
Well, so was this Greta incident in Amsterdam an isolated one, or are we seeing this kind of thing happen, political division elsewhere within the climate movement over the Israel-Hamas war?
We've seen several instances. I know the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade was disrupted due to people shouting liberation for Palestine and planets. Even at the UN Climate Conference this last December, world leaders from Turkey and South Africa got up and used the climate conference as a platform to talk about Israel. And again, I fully respect that other people might have different views from myself. I'd like to think mine are pretty nuanced, but to use climate as a platform to express those views and to link them inaccurately, that's what I have an issue with.
Well, why is this being linked? I know, so you believe this is an intentional effort to meld climate change and anti-Israel activism. So who's doing it and why?
There's been a few reasons discussed among these folks for why the two are linked. One has been claim that Israel is trying to steal Palestinian fossil fuels through this war. This, of course, is not true. It was unprovoked. Israel is trying to free hostages, but the fossil fuels they're talking about are offshore gas leases 80 miles west of Haifa in the Mediterranean Sea. This is nowhere near any Palestinian territory. I've also seen claims that Israel is making it illegal for Palestinians to collect rainwater. This is sort of true. There's difficult permitting regulations in Israel due to the fact that they view water as public property. This has led some officials to discriminately deny permits for Palestinians, which is a big problem, but different from how they're explaining it. I've even seen stuff about carbon emissions from the war, which is a little misleading. The carbon emissions in Gaza have been like a few 100,000 tons of carbon as opposed to 150 million in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So there's a lot of these different things, right? And I think they're being presented in a misleading and sometimes inaccurate way.
Well, do you think there's anti-Semitism in the climate change movement?
There could be. I think it's been difficult and, quite frankly, emotional for me over the last few months as someone who's Jewish to see a lot of the reaction to this stuff. I always try to assume the best in people, that people don't have hate in their heart because of my ethnicity and religion. But at the same time, I think a lot of the rhetoric does cross into that. So whether it's due to ignorance or actually intentional, yeah, I think you could say that.
Well, you have your climate change purists, and then those who want to be a part of the newest thing, the latest protest, right? So what does this mean then for the future of the climate change movement?
I think it remains to be seen. There are some wonderful people out there who are Jewish climate activists, or even, for example, I traveled to Israel last year. I got to meet a Palestinian professor, Tarek Abu Hamed, who I got to interview in an episode of The Sweaty Penguin. He's working with the Arava Institute in Israel to bring Israelis, Palestinians, and Jordanians together on climate solutions. And that type of peace building is really what gives me a lot of inspiration. So I hope that people can look to efforts like that, look for the bridge builders, and hopefully that's where the climate movement can go.
Okay, keeping it positive. And where can we look at your podcast? Where do we find that?
Yeah, you can find The Sweaty Penguin at thesweatypenguin.com or all over social media. You can also find myself at Ethan Brown 5151 on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok.
And it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, right?
Yeah, it's, I mean, the name suggests it's a podcast that blends climate and comedy, so that's what we're about.
Okay, Young Voices commentator Ethan Brown, host of the Sweaty Penguin podcast. Thank you, Ethan, for providing those insights. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.